Welcome to the Strength for the Day podcast, which is a daily Bible study with Dennis Fountain. We hope this time together will be challenging, sharpening, uplifting, encouraging, and strengthening to your Christian walk. Thank you for joining us, and we pray you are helped through today's study. Well, welcome back to Strength for the Day as we jump into yet another study here in the book of 1 Samuel. We just have today and 3 more episodes, so counting today, 4 episodes total, and we will be done with the book of 1 Samuel. And I'll let you know later on actually, you know what? No, you're just going to have to wait until we start our brand new season and brand new month in the month of June to know what book that we go to next, all right? So today, though, we are in 1 Samuel chapter number 26. Today, 1 Samuel chapter 26. Remember, we're in the life of David. David has been running from Saul. Recently, we've seen that God provided safety for David, protection for him. And we were challenged in our last episode about influences in our life. And we listened in as to some influence in David's life in 1 Samuel 24, 1 Samuel 25. And then we were just challenged about being a person that receives godly influence, but then also one that gives godly influence. Today we come to 1 Samuel chapter number 26, and this morning as we start, we really find ourselves at a familiar storyline. The familiar storyline is David running from Saul. Remember, Saul is the king at this time, but he knows that God's hand is upon David, and Saul is very jealous of that. And Saul begins to pursue David, and multiple times in the last few chapters, Saul even tries to kill David. We didn't highlight it, but a few chapters ago, you can go read that while Saul was really frustrated about something and David's trying to soothe him, that Saul throws a javelin at David and tries to kill him multiple times. And then Saul pursues David into the wilderness of En-Gedi, and Saul pursues David while David is running around, all over the place, and David goes to the cave of Adullam and saves the city of Keilah. During all of this, Saul pursuing him at various times throughout the story. So when we come to 1 Samuel 26, that's exactly what we find taking place. We find Saul pursuing David once again. Verse number 1 of chapter 26, Now the Ziphites came to Saul at Gibeah, saying, Is David not hiding in the hill of Hachilah, opposite Jeshimon? Then Saul arose and went down to the wilderness of Ziph, having 3,000 chosen men of Israel with him to seek David in the wilderness of Ziph. Now, you and I, we don't know where these places are. I'm probably mispronouncing some of these names of these cities, but nonetheless, it comes to Saul's attention. Hey, the Ziphites come to Saul. We know where David is hiding. And Saul rounds up 3,000 people. 3,000 men, choice men, warriors to pursue David. What's interesting is up to this point, we know that David has just over 400 men. Saul, why are you so bitter against David? So he pursues David, and verse 4, David stays in the wilderness. Saul comes after him. Verse 4, David sends spies. And they understand that Saul has indeed come. And so David arose and came to the place where Saul had encamped. And David saw the place where Saul lay, and Abner the son of Ner, the commander of his army. Now Saul lay within the camp with the people encamped all around him. And then David answered and said to Ahimelech the Hittite and to Abishai the son of Zeruiah, brother of Joab, saying, Who will go down with me to Saul into the camp? And Abishai said, I will go down. So David and Abishai came to the people by night. And there Saul lay sleeping within the camp with his spear stuck in the ground by his head. And Abner and the people lay all around him. Then Abishai said to David, God has delivered your enemy into your hand this day. Now therefore, please, let me strike him at once with the spear, right to the earth, and I will not have to strike him a second time. So Saul is with his right-hand man, Abner. David is with his right-hand man, Abishai. Saul has 3,000 men with him. David and Abishai sneak into the camp. They come to Saul where he's sleeping. Abishai says, let me kill him. I won't miss. I'm not going to have to strike him twice. I will strike him once and he will be dead. We will be done with this problem. But David said to Abishai, do not destroy him, for who can stretch out his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? David said furthermore, as the Lord lives, the Lord shall strike him, or his day shall come to die, and he will go out to battle and perish. The Lord forbid that I should stretch out my hand against the Lord's anointed, but please, take now the spear and the jug of water that are by his hand and let us go, or by his head and let us go. And so they take his spear, they take his water, they sneak back out. The next day they wake up and David yells across the ravine perhaps again, or across the encampment. David yells to Abner and says, hey, isn't your job to protect Saul? Why is it then that I am holding the spear of your king and the water pitcher, the jug of water of your canteen? That's the word I was looking for, of your king. Basically like, hey, we got in and you didn't even notice us. And Saul knew David's voice and said, is that your voice, my son David? And David said, it is my voice, O Lord, my king. And he said, why does my Lord thus pursue his servant? For what have I done? What evil is in my hand? Now therefore, please let my Lord the king hear the words of his servant. If the Lord has stirred you up against me, then let him accept an offering. But if it's the children of men, may they be cursed before the Lord, for they have driven me out this day from sharing in the inheritance of the Lord, saying, go serve other gods. So now do not let my blood fall to the earth before the face of the Lord. For the king of Israel has come out to seek a flea, as when one hunts a partridge in the mountains. And Saul said, I have sinned. Return, my son David, for I will harm you no more, because my life was precious in your eyes this day. Indeed, I have played the fool and erred exceedingly. David answered and said, here is the king's spear. Let one of the young men come over and get it. May the Lord repay every man for his righteousness and his faithfulness, for the Lord delivered you into my hand today, but I would not stretch out my hand against the Lord's anointed. And David continued, verse 25, Saul said to David, may you be blessed, my son David. You shall both do great things and also still prevail. So David went his way and Saul returned to his place. What do we find in chapter 26? Of course, Saul still pursuing David, but the lessons that I learn in this passage are what to do with people who mistreat us. What to do with people who mistreat us. There's some lessons that David learned that I see him helping us with regarding when people are aligned against us, people are mistreating us, people are doing us harm, no matter who that person is. It may be a leader of some sort, it may be a friend who was a friend, it may be a coworker, it may be a family member. How should we respond with those who have aught against us, who mistreat us? I see first today the lesson that David is learning and the lesson that David teaches us is, number one, we have to let God deal with things. We have to let God deal with things. Now that may sound like a very cop-out answer, but the truth is that David said to Saul many times, if you look in the passage, he says in verse 8 through 12, specifically verses 9 and 10, David says, I'm going to choose to let God deal with this. I'm not going to lash out. I'm not going to strike you. I'm going to let God deal with this. And what a great lesson for us that when people have aught against us, we have to choose to say, you know what, God, I'm going to let you deal with this. I'm not going to respond hastily. I'm not going to be the one with insecurities that run my life like Saul is. I'm not going to allow bitterness to be in my life. No, I choose today to let God deal with this. The second lesson that I see is we must learn that while we let God deal with it, we choose to extend grace and mercy with a spirit of humility. Choose to extend grace and mercy with a spirit of humility. In our passage, David doesn't exact revenge upon Saul. Instead, he takes Saul's spear and water for the point of a conversation starter with Abner. But in doing this, we find David showing grace and mercy with humility. Remember Abishai? David kill him, and David saying, no, I'm not going to do that. But then he reaches out across the ravine to Abner, and Saul recognizes his voice, and David responds in humility. He doesn't respond in pride saying, dude, I totally could have killed you. You guys need to leave me alone. He says, hey, Saul, you're my king. What have I done against you? If God has something against me, then I'll make a sacrifice and make it right with God. But if people are causing you to do this, or you are causing you to do this, man, you are driving a wedge between a good friendship and a good thing. What do we see that? We see David having humility. Extending grace, extending mercy with humility. You know, the people in our lives that mistreat us and hurt us and are aligned against us, one of the best responses that we can give them is the response of grace and humility, grace and mercy, and treating them the way that we would want to be treated in the situation, even though they are not treating us the way that we would desire. So number one, let God deal with the situation. Number two, extend grace and mercy with humility. But then the last lesson that I see we learn and David's learning is this, that you control you. You can't worry about everybody else around you. You control you. If you look in the passage, verses 22 through 25, David basically says, may the Lord repay every man for his righteousness. The Lord delivered you into my hand today, but I would not stretch out my hand. Indeed, as your life was valued much this day in my eyes, so let my life be valued much in the eyes of the Lord, and let him deliver me out of all tribulation. David saying, I'm trusting God. I'm just going to worry about me. You know, in your situations in life and in your circumstances, you can't control everybody else. You can't control what people do around you. You and I, we control ourselves, how we respond, what we do. So today, I want to encourage you as we process and listen to the words that we find in this passage. May we choose today to say, you know what, Lord, I'm going to let you deal with the hurts and disappointments in my life caused by people. I'm going to choose to be someone who extends grace and mercy with humility, no matter how I'm treated. And God, I'm going to remember that I only control my life. I'm not going to try to choose to dictate what everybody else does. God, it's me. I'm going to recognize Romans 14:12. Every one of us will give an account of himself to God. I don't answer for everybody else. I answer for me. So in dealing with our mistreatments, hey, let God deal with them. Number two, extend grace and mercy with humility. And number three, remember, you control you. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow as we pick up in chapters 27 and 28. We'll see you then.